Hey, what's going on, parents? Welcome back to another edition of Teenager Tuesday. Happy last week of May.
Woohoo!
June is right around the corner, halfway through the
Summer.
year. Almost. That happened quick.
We're getting there.
We're getting there. Very
Longest,
quickly.
shortest year of my life.
Yeah. Isn't it kind of weird how time quickly goes?
And the older you get, the faster it goes.
Oh, I have a theory, and I'll say it quickly because
Okay,
I want to get
yes.
to the content. But my theory is that when we're 5 years old, 1 year is a fifth of our life. But when you're 50, 1 year is not really that, I feel like we just accumulate more, so it's a less of a percentage of our life.
Write that down, you guys. Put
That's
that
my
in your
theory.
journals.
I have-
Will's theory.
Yeah.
Will's theory.
I got one of them theories.
Oh, that's a good one.
Mary, again, thank you for joining us again.
Yeah.
Parents, if you missed part 2, go back.
Part 1.
Part 1.
Yeah.
Go back, listen to that to part 1 because we're going to build off of that.
Yeah.
And if you haven't met Mary before, you recognize her voice because she is the online campus pastor here at
Yes.
Hope.
There's no greater compliment than someone knowing your voice.
Yeah. I had somebody at a Starbucks. I was talking to someone on the phone. I hung up and they turned back and I thought I recognized
I
that
know
voice
you.
from the loop, from the announcement videos.
I love that.
It's like, oh, hey.
It's special,
Yeah.
I think.
It's kind of funny, 'cause we're just regular people, and then we're in a video. Anyways,
We're famous.
so famous.
We're on the big screen.
Yeah, so famous. No. Well, hey, Mary, we're here, and we're kind of talking about kind of a heavier topic, abuse.
Yeah.
And we talked last week. It's more than just physical, and you kind of touched on all abuse can be kind of put under this umbrella of emotional abuse.
Yeah.
And kind of gave some examples. And so we want to kind of build off of that. And honestly, how all of us listening too, this isn't just a teenager thing, but, and I had a few relationships jump in my mind of friendships and dating ships and that kind of thing. What is it that, how do we get to this point? For parents listening, they have a teenager in an unhealthy friendship.
Well,
how did they even get into that?
Well, and I think there's probably a lot of answers to that. There's a lot of little things that happen in our lives, whether it's how we grew up, things like that. But I think that there are some specific things that, like I mentioned in the other video, how I walked through abuse myself, and I noticed these things. And when I noticed these things, I realized, oh my gosh, this is happening everywhere. What if we could pinpoint these things? And they're things that we're doing unaware. So we're doing these things habitually and not realizing that they're harmful, which is classic human being behavior there.
Yeah.
And so
It's we all eat fried chicken.
Yeah.
But we all know it's not good for us.
It's not good for us.
But it tastes good.
But everyone likes it, so here we
Yeah.
go. But I think that there are things that we do that are perpetuating this and reinforcing this. And whenever I walked through my own healing, and I went to Regeneration here at Hope, and that was super helpful.
So good, yeah.
And honestly, if you have a student, send them to Student Regen. If that's something where they're like, hey, you notice, and y'all have a conversation, send them there. But maybe yourself, go there and starting it with you and really walking through that yourself, because it all starts in the home, doesn't it? So much of what we do, so many of those patterns, they start in the home. But this was one of the things that was revolutionary to me and that I wish I was taught. And when I learned it, even when I just first started learning it, I was like, oh my gosh. And it was something I actually learned in a self-defense class in college. So fun story, really quick.
Okay.
Went to self-defense in college, thought I was going to learn how to put people in a headlock. I did, and I could now.
I don't hurt me.
But the biggest thing I learned was learning some of these basics, and it kind of boiled down to boundary confusion. One of the things we were taught, this is such a funny thing that I like to tell people about, but what?
Well, I'm just I would think, the first lesson is here, this is how you get a headlock.
Right?
Yeah.
One of the biggest lessons was how to say no, but they would have us stand on a baseline. I told you, I think I might have shared this story with you. On a baseline, we had now, if you know me, you know this was very hard for me. We had to. I hope that camera's looking right at me right now.
Yeah, it is.
Stop. Stay back.
You had to shout.
You cannot smile. You have to exert what you want, which is it's difficult at times. And I think especially in abusive situations, the problem is we have this boundary confusion. So some of the things we learned in that class was that, and that's actually when I was like, oh, I'm in an abusive situation.
Huh.
That was my first time.
Yeah.
And for years, I knew I was in an abusive situation and was learning how to navigate that. Because some of them you can't so easily escape from.
Yeah, yeah.
And so boundary confusion is basically this. And we talk about this at Hope Fellowship in Reengage, and maybe you'll hear it with some of the staff. I can't remember where else maybe we've had this conversation about boundaries, but we say, draw a circle around yourself.
Yeah.
In other words, I'm responsible for my thoughts, feelings,
Reengage,
actions. Yeah, it's huge in Reengage.
Yeah.
And in a marriage, for you, if you're in a marriage, like this is just 101 of growing up, maturing, and being a healthy individual.
Yeah.
Draw a circle around yourself. And what that means even beyond that, I think, is knowing where I end and you begin.
Yeah.
And so I've learned to say, okay, where is it where someone says, come this far but no further?
Yeah.
And I didn't have that in my own situations. I thought, and you see this in sexual abuse and physical abuse, when you're physically, that boundary, that's an obvious physical boundary, right? But it gets crossed and it confuses people. And so I think it's so important to have clear boundaries, understand what that looks like, but it is not simple.
Yeah, no, it's not. And it probably feels so, when you were in that class, it probably felt so awkward because you're standing in a room, nobody is actually like attacking you or something, and you're just shouting, stop, stay over there.
Stop,
and like
stay back.
Doing these big hand motions. But I mean, if something ever came up, because you practiced standing up for yourself there, you'd be much more inclined to react in that way, to stand up for yourself there.
Yeah.
So even a takeaway for parents from this would be, man, maybe you work with your student on standing up for themselves emotionally, physically, and it's going to be funny and feel awkward.
Yeah.
But man, you're helping them be preemptive and knowing how to react to that situation when it comes up.
Yeah, and I think because I am a girl and speaking as a girl, this is uniquely difficult, I think, at least from my perspective, is, you hear girls and they'll be like, no. Like they'll laugh, because we are, have you heard the quote, we teach young boys to be brave and young women to be perfect. Yeah. And so we tend to navigate our lives in a way where we're accommodating everybody, never ourselves. And so we're constantly, we smile like that because we feel we have to, because we don't want to hurt your feelings. Like the girl in the last one. In the last video, go check it out. Lots of promo for the last video.
Yeah.
She felt bad because she said no, because that's boundary confusion.
Yeah.
To the max.
Yeah. Well, and like, there's probably a lot of people that maybe they didn't know what their boundaries should be. Yeah. And they, like, young men, young women, like young guys get picked on and they think, oh, this is just how guys are. But it's too far. It's not just like fun, making fun, like poking fun or whatever, but or even they don't even say like, hey, that really hurt my feelings. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It hurts everyone, I think, when there's a lack of boundary understanding. And what I want to say to the parents especially is boundaries matter and they are important. And so in a minute, I'm going to kind of share an example, but I don't want it to sound as if I'm saying boundaries don't matter, like you shouldn't put boundaries on your kids in certain ways. As teenagers grow up, boundaries change. So you might have to have stricter boundaries when they're younger, you know, like there are certain things, but those have to evolve so that we can empower and not control and teach them how to be mature adults and grow. Because we don't want them constantly having to rely on someone else putting a boundary for them. Really, it's not to not have boundaries, it's to teach them to set their own boundaries. Right, yeah. And so I think that that's really huge. So an example, and again, speaking as a woman, and I think there's a little bit of a responsibility that I have to do that. And I want to hear your perspective as well, being a guy, because I think that it's important, that kind of perspective. But something that we're told as women is how to dress, how to talk, and what to post. So a lot of times, these boundaries, so that circle, we tell young women specifically, especially in Christian culture, that their circle's bigger than it is. So don't just draw a circle around yourself, draw a circle around everybody in this room, that guy over there. For their feelings, I am now responsible for what they do. Yeah. And even if it's what they do to me. And so that can cause some major damage. So boundaries important, teaching them to cultivate their own boundaries, but we go after the things about how they dress, how they talk, what they post. Yeah. And those are important things. I would say they matter big time.
Yeah.
But we go after them and we try and force them rather than cultivate them. And we're teaching them what to do, not how to be.
Yeah.
And there's a couple results that I think that come from that. One is over responsibility. That was what happened to me. And or rebellion. And I'm going to dress what the way I want. I'm going to do the things I want. And not that that's the appropriate response a teenager should have, but it's an understandable response when a boundary's been crossed. And so I think we have to define those boundaries, understand those boundaries, and empower our kids to understand, okay, our kids, like I have a kid.
They are our kids.
But we have to teach them to, we need to go after their teaching them to cultivate a faith, because it's inside out, not outside in.
Yeah.
So I think that's what happens with boundaries is we try and go after the outside and think it's going to change the inside and really just going to revolt. We got to go after the heart. Hey, are you spending time with Jesus? Like what are the things that matter most? Let's go after that. Whenever I came to know Jesus, it changed literally everything. And then I started changing the way I acted, things I did, things I watched, things I said, what I wore. All of that changed because it was a choice I was making because I was in love with Jesus. And I think that that's what we have to look for, especially when we're trying to get our kids to act and be a certain way. We can't change that all the time, but we can teach them to know Jesus.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and all this talk on boundaries, you had a great suggestion, a book by John Townsend and Henry Cloud, The Boundaries with Teens. And for anybody listening or watching, the first 3 people that shoot me an email, I would love to give you a copy of this. All you have to do is email me at wperry@hopefellowship.net, wperry@hopefellowship.net. We want to resource you on this. And if there's any way, conversations come up and you're like, hey, this came up and we have no idea how to navigate it. We want to do this with you. We want to, you can message Mary on Instagram, Mary Bag of Donuts.
Mary Bag of Donuts.
You can email her. You can message us at Hope. We say this every week, but we mean this with our heart. And it is the reason that we started doing this parent podcast is because you can do this and you're not alone doing this. You can do this. You're not alone. God is with you and so are we. Have a great week.